The school bus rumbled down Juniper Grove Lane at exactly 3:15 p.m., the same time it always dropped off the children from Pine Ridge Elementary. Inside, little Ava Bennett sat quietly in her usual seat, clutching the straps of her purple backpack. The sunlight reflected off the metal braces on both her legs, braces she had worn since she was 3 years old because of her cerebral palsy. Every movement required effort. Every step required planning. But Ava never complained. She was gentle, patient, and brave in ways most adults weren't. As the bus halted, Mrs. Darlene Cooper, the warm, gray-haired bus driver who had driven that route for 17 years, looked back and offered Ava a patient smile. "Take your time, sweetheart. No rush. You've got this," she said softly. Ava nodded, gripping the railing with her small, trembling hands. She took a slow breath, her braces clicking with each tiny shift of movement. One step down, pause, another step. She always moved carefully, making sure her legs followed her brain's commands. The children behind her waited quietly. They were used to her pace and never complained. But today, trouble waited outside. At the bottom of the stairs, blocking the path like a bulldozer, stood Victoria Hale, the HOA president everyone in the neighborhood feared. With her perfectly styled blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, and expression of permanent irritation, she looked more like she was preparing to fire someone than pick up a child. Her teenage son stood behind her, scrolling on his phone, uninterested. Victoria, however, was raging out of control. "Hurry up!" she screeched, her voice slicing through the afternoon air. "My son has karate in 20 minutes! This is ridiculous!" Ava froze. Her eyes widened, and she instinctively pressed her back against the railing for safety. I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm going as fast as I can. I'm 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 going as fast as I can." "Fast? Fast?" Victoria barked, stepping even closer. "Every single day I have to wait for this. This is a public bus, not a disability shuttle." Mrs. Cooper stood instantly, gripping the sides of her seat. "Miss Hale, please step back. Ava needs space to get down safely. She has a disability." "I don't care!" Victoria screamed so loudly the children flinched. "Kids have schedules! My son has places to be! She's just dragging this out for attention!" Ava's lips trembled. Her right knee brace slightly caught on the metal edge of the step, and she gasped in fear. She tried to adjust her foot, but the movement was too slow for Victoria's exploding impatience. "That's it." Victoria shoved past Mrs. Cooper and grabbed Ava by her thin wrist. Everything happened in a single horrifying second. Ava's braces locked. Her legs couldn't adjust. She stumbled forward helplessly as Victoria yanked her down the steps with brutal force. Her small body bounced down each metal step, her knees smashing, her braces clanking sharply, her backpack flying off her shoulders. She hit the concrete sidewalk with a bone-cracking thud. A scream ripped from her throat. "Mommy, it hurts my wrist, my wrist!" For a moment, the whole world froze. Mrs. Cooper shouted, horrified, and several parents ran forward. But Victoria, the woman who caused it all, just crossed her arms like she was the victim. "Stop the theatrics," she snapped. If she wasn't so slow, this wouldn't have. "Emergency! Somebody call an ambulance now!" Mrs. Cooper yelled, kneeling beside Ava. Ava sobbed, holding her wrist, which was already swelling and turning purple. Her leg braces were scratched and bent, her knees bright red and bleeding. She tried to sit up but winced in unbearable pain. "I'm sorry," she whimpered through tears. "I'm sorry I fell. I'm sorry I held everyone up." Those words broke everyone's heart. A child apologizing for having a disability. 3 miles away, State Attorney General Laura Bennett sat in her office reviewing legal briefs when her phone rang. When she saw the caller ID Mrs. Cooper, her stomach dropped. "Miss Bennett, the bus driver whispered, voice trembling. It's Ava. She's hurt. Bad. An ambulance has been called. Laura felt her entire world tilt. What happened? She choked out. Victoria Hale. She dragged Ava off the bus. Ava fell down the steps. Her wrist may be broken. Laura stood so fast her chair crashed to the floor behind her. I'm on my way. Don't let Victoria leave. Her voice was low, controlled, dangerous. For she wasn't just a mother. She was the state attorney general, the highest-ranking law officer in the state. And Victoria Hale had no idea she had just attacked the daughter of the wrong woman. The drive to Pine Ridge Elementary felt like an eternity for Attorney General Laura Bennett, though she never once allowed her speed to slip into recklessness. Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Every breath felt like fire in her lungs. Her daughter, her sweet, brave Ava, was hurt, and not by an accident, not by fate, but by the hands of a woman who treated cruelty like a hobby. As she turned into the school parking lot, she immediately saw the scene. An ambulance parked with lights flashing, parents murmuring anxiously, teachers standing near the bus in shock. In the center of it all, Ava. Her tiny form sat inside the open ambulance, cradling her wrist, her face streaked with tears. Laura didn't remember parking. She didn't remember closing her car door. All she remembered was running. Her voice cracked through the chaos. Ava turned, eyes red, face trembling. Mama. Laura reached her baby in seconds and wrapped her in the gentlest embrace she could manage. Ava melted into her chest, shaking like a leaf, gripping Laura's shirt with her uninjured hand. It hurts. Mama. I fell. I tried to go faster. I didn't mean to make people wait. Those words stabbed Laura straight through the heart. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered fiercely, brushing hair from Ava's wet cheeks. You don't ever have to apologize for being yourself. Do you hear me? Never. Ava nodded weakly, though she still trembled as the paramedic examined her wrist. Behind them, Victoria Hale stood with her arms crossed, looking irritated rather than remorseful. She hadn't approached the ambulance. She hadn't asked if Ava was okay. Instead, she muttered loudly to another parent, "This is what happens when parents coddle their kids." Mrs. Cooper overheard and nearly exploded. Only Officer Reeves stepping in kept the peace. Officer Reeves approached Laura with urgency. Miss Bennett, I'm so sorry. We have multiple eyewitnesses. The evidence is strong. Very strong. Laura didn't look up at him. Her eyes stayed on Ava. What charges? She asked, voice icy and calm. A minimum of assault on a minor, child endangerment, battery causing injury, and violation of disability protection laws. Possibly more depending on medical reports. Laura nodded slowly. Her anger, a quiet, simmering force. I want every one of those charges pursued. We intend to, Reeves said firmly. But there's something else. Laura finally lifted her gaze. She refuses to admit she did anything wrong. Of course, she didn't. Victoria Hale was the type of woman who lived in a bubble built from entitlement and arrogance. An HOA president who terrorized families with violation, slips for the color of their trash cans, the length of their grass, the noise level of birthday parties. She wasn't used to consequences. But today, consequences had found her. Laura set her jaw. Bring her here. Officer Reeves nodded and walked toward Victoria. What happened next was almost eerie. Victoria didn't look scared. She looked offended. You need me for something? Because I really don't have time for this drama. That child tripped. I barely touched. You need to come speak to Miss Bennett, Reeves said. Who? Victoria scoffed loudly. I don't have time to talk to some soccer mom with too much lip gloss. Reeves cleared his throat. Laura Bennett, the state attorney general. Victoria froze. Her sunglasses slipped down her nose. The what? Her voice wobbled. The attorney general. Reeves repeated. Suddenly, the color drained from Victoria's face. She swallowed hard, glanced toward the ambulance, then straightened her shoulders with fake courage that didn't match her shaking hands. Laura stood beside the ambulance, one hand resting gently on Ava's hair, her posture calm, her expression unreadable. The presence of someone used to standing in courtrooms facing danger, injustice, and corruption without blinking. Victoria approached slowly. Ms. Bennett. Her voice trembled. This is all just a misunderstanding. Laura turned her head, her eyes locking onto Victoria's with the cold, quiet precision of someone who did not forgive easily. Explain to me, Laura said softly, how dragging a disabled child down a metal staircase qualifies as a misunderstanding. Victoria opened her mouth, but no words came out. Laura stepped closer, her voice low and steady, the voice of a mother and the voice of the law. You didn't just hurt my daughter, she said. You humiliated her, you terrified her, and you made her believe that she was the problem. Victoria took a shaky step back. Do you know what my job is? Laura continued. I enforce state laws, especially the ones that protect children, disabled citizens, and victims of cruelty. Victoria's lips quivered. I didn't know. No, Laura interrupted. You didn't care. Silence fell. Then she nodded to Officer Reeves. Arrest her, Victoria gasped. Wait, no, you can't arrest me. I'm the HOA President. Reeves replied dryly. Ma'am, that just means your complaints are printed on fancier paper. The handcuffs clicked. Ava watched quietly from the ambulance, eyes wide but relieved. Laura kissed her daughter's forehead again and whispered, No one hurts you, not while I'm alive. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and quiet fear. Little Ava lay on the narrow bed, her wrist wrapped in a temporary cast, her legs still enclosed in metal braces. Machines beeped softly, marking her heartbeat. Small, steady, brave. Attorney General Laura Bennett sat beside her, holding her hand gently, rubbing soothing circles with her thumb. Ava's eyelids fluttered. Mama, did I make people late? Those words broke what little remained of Laura's patience with the world. No, sweetheart, she whispered fiercely, voice trembling with controlled pain. You did absolutely nothing wrong. Some people are just cruel, but they don't get to win. Not while I'm here. Ava nodded weakly and drifted back to sleep. Laura stood slowly, her composure returning the shift from mother to law officer almost visible. She stepped into the hallway where Detective Ryan McAllister and Officer Reeves were waiting. Miss Bennett, Reeves said, we need to continue our statement collection. We also have something you should see. Detective McAllister held up a small tablet. It appears a parent recorded the entire incident. Laura's blood ran cold, but steady. Play it. The screen lit up. There was Ava taking careful, shaky steps. There was Victoria shoving past the driver. There was the grab, the yank, the tumble. And then, the moment that turned Laura's stomach. Victoria, standing over Ava, saying, Get up. Stop being dramatic. Laura inhaled sharply, her nails pressing into her palm. Detective McAllister continued. This video is clear evidence of intentional aggression. With your permission, we'll push for felony charges. You have it, Laura said without hesitation. Then Officer Reeves added, Also, 2 parents reported that Victoria had been targeting Ava for months. Complaints about her slowing down traffic, taking too long on sidewalks, and even, this one's bad, suggesting your daughter doesn't belong in a regular school. A silence heavy as stone hung between them. Laura closed her eyes briefly, steadying her breath. Open a full investigation into her HOA conduct as well. I think we'll uncover a pattern. Ryan nodded. Already happening. But there's more. He handed over a folder. Inside were documents. HOA violation notices, dozens of them. Petty, harassing, unhinged. 1 for Ava's wheelchair ramp, 1 for blocking neighborhood aesthetic, 1 for having a medical transport van parked too long medical, 1 for excessive noise, which was simply Ava practicing her leg exercises on the porch. Laura's hands tightened around the folder. This wasn't an isolated attack. This was a long-term campaign of cruelty. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. It was her assistant, Sarah Patel, from the Attorney General's office. Laura answered. "Tell me." Sarah spoke briskly. "We pulled her records. Victoria Hale has a history of reports filed against her. Verbal harassment, neighborhood intimidation, 1 investigation into a disabled neighbor being denied HOA accommodations." A pause. "And Laura, she is also behind on HOA funds. She's been using fines to cover her own mismanaged accounts." Laura stared down the hallway, jaw set. So this wasn't just cruelty. This was corruption. Sarah continued. "Local news has picked up the arrest. Social media is exploding." Laura sighed once. "Let it explode." She hung up just as the hospital hallway filled with the quiet clicks of heels. A nurse approached. "Miss Bennett, Ava's X-rays are ready." But before Laura entered the room, a familiar voice called softly from behind her. "Laura?" She turned. It was Principal Daniels, a soft-spoken woman with gentle eyes and a clipboard clutched to her chest. "I came as soon as I heard. I'm so sorry." Laura nodded stiffly. "Thank you." Principal Daniels hesitated, then said, "I think you should know. Victoria logged formal complaints with the school too. Multiple claims that Ava should not be allowed to use the bus unless she could do it quickly and without disruption. She even demanded we remove Ava from the mainstream classroom." Laura felt her pulse throb in her temples. "And you entertained these requests?" she asked quietly. "No," Daniel said immediately. "We rejected every one. But she was relentless. She believes disabled children are burdens." Laura allowed herself one slow breath. "Principal Daniels, thank you for telling me. It helps." Then she entered Ava's room again, sitting gently beside her. Her daughter slept peacefully now, but Laura knew the fear that would live in her heart if she didn't act. This wasn't just about Ava anymore. It was about every child Victoria had intimidated, every family she had bullied, every disabled person she had shamed. Victoria Hale had ignited the wrong fury, and this time, her victim's mother wasn't just a caregiver. She was the law. The courtroom was packed, not just with lawyers and reporters, but with parents from the school, neighbors from the subdivision, and supporters who had followed the case online. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation, the low hum of whispered outrage filling the air like static. Attorney General Laura Bennett entered silently, her posture straight, her eyes calm but unyielding. She wasn't here as a mother today. She was here as the prosecutor. Victoria Hale sat at the defense table. Her usual arrogance dimmed. Her blonde hair was pulled back too tight, her face powdered heavily to hide blotches of stress. She clutched her designer purse like a life raft. As Laura took her seat at the prosecutor's table, Victoria's lawyer leaned down to whisper something to her, but Victoria's eyes stayed glued on Laura. It wasn't anger. It was fear. The judge, Honorable Marissa Cole, entered, and the room rose. "Everyone, please be seated," she said, firmly. "We are here today in the matter of the state versus Victoria Hale, charged with aggravated child endangerment, assault on a minor, harassment, and civil rights violations concerning a disabled child." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Victoria swallowed hard. The judge nodded toward Laura. "Prosecution, your opening statement." Laura stood slowly, walking to the center of the room. Her heels were the only sound, sharp, commanding. "Your Honor," she began, "this case is not simply about a woman who hurt a child. It is about a pattern of cruelty, a pattern of discrimination, and a pattern of abuse of power that targeted a little girl who could not defend herself." The jury leaned forward. "On the morning of the incident, my daughter, a disabled child, recovering from multiple surgeries, was walking toward the school bus, carefully, slowly, doing her best. Laura's voice tightened slightly, but she did not let it break. But the defendant, Mrs. Hale, believed my child was an inconvenience. The courtroom stilled. We will show video evidence of the defendant shoving past the bus driver, grabbing my daughter by the arm, and ripping her off balance, resulting in a fractured wrist. Gasps erupted. Laura continued, her voice colder now. We will show documentation of harassment stretching months. HOA violations designed to bully a disabled child. School complaints demanding she be removed from mainstream classes. Threats disguised as rules. She paused. This is not a woman who lost her temper once. This is a woman who made a sport of cruelty. Laura returned to her seat. The judge nodded. Defense? Victoria's attorney, a tall, thin man, stood. Your Honor, the defense maintains that the incident was a misunderstanding. Mrs. Hale did not intend. Laura raised an eyebrow, watching as the attorney struggled to soften the impossible. Did not intend harm. He finished weakly. The judge nodded for the first witness. Call bus driver Michael Torres. The man stepped forward, hands shaking slightly. He took the stand and swore his oath. Laura approached. Mr. Torres, what did you see that morning? Torres exhaled shakily. She shoved me aside. Said I was taking too long. Then she grabbed the girl. Hard. Like she was yanking a bag, not a child. Victoria's lawyer stood. Objection, exaggeration. Judge Cole shook her head. Overruled. Continue. Torres' voice grew firm. I told her to wait. I told her the child needed support. She ignored me. I'd never seen someone so angry at, well, nothing. Laura nodded gently and played the video. The room went silent, except for the audio. Move! I don't have all day! Ma'am, please wait. Get up. Stop being dramatic. Ava's pained cry echoed through the speakers. A mother from the gallery covered her mouth. A father whispered, Oh my God. Victoria stared down at her hands, knuckles white. Next witness, Principal Daniels. She confirmed the complaints, confirmed the harassment, confirmed Victoria's attempts to remove Ava from school activities. Next, witness Dr. Hernandez, Ava's orthopedic surgeon. A fall like that, he explained clinically, is extremely dangerous for a child wearing leg braces. She could have suffered long-term damage. Then came the final blow. Detective Ryan McAllister testified, laying out every piece of evidence they uncovered. Misuse of HOA fines. Targeted harassment of disabled families. Emails recovered from Victoria's laptop with phrases like, I'm tired of these slow kids making us look bad. Her wheelchair ramp ruins the neighborhood image. People like them bring down property value. The courtroom reacted with outrage. Victoria's face drained of color. Her attorney leaned over, whispering frantic instructions, but she was frozen, staring straight ahead, breathing fast and shallow. Finally, the judge called for a recess. As the room emptied, Victoria approached Laura, trembling. You, she whispered. You're ruining me. Laura met her eyes with icy calm. No, Mrs. Hale. You did that yourself. Victoria's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Laura stepped closer. You hurt my daughter. You tormented my family. You used your position to prey on the vulnerable. You didn't think anyone would stop you. Her voice dropped to a razor-thin whisper. But you chose the wrong child to attack. Victoria stumbled back as if struck. The bailiff guided her away. The courtroom felt different when everyone returned from recess. Tension no longer dominated, the air certainty did. The jury had seen enough. Victoria sat stiffly beside her attorney, her breathing shallow and her eyes glassy. It was the look of someone who had finally realized she wasn't untouchable. Judge Cole entered, took her seat, and turned to the jury box. Ladies and gentlemen, she said firmly, have you reached a verdict? A middle-aged woman, the jury foreperson, stood. We have, Your Honor. The entire courtroom leaned in. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. The foreperson unfolded the slip of paper with shaking hands. In the matter of the State versus Victoria Hale, on the charge of aggravated assault on a minor, we find the defendant. She paused. The silence cut like glass. Guilty. Victoria's shoulders jerked. A gasp rippled through the gallery. The foreperson continued. On the charge of child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of harassment and discriminatory targeting of a disabled minor, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of civil rights violations, we find the defendant guilty. It was a clean sweep. Not a single doubt. Victoria covered her mouth. Her attorney placed a hand on her arm, but she flinched away, as if he were the reason her world was collapsing. Judge Cole nodded solemnly. Mrs. Hale, please rise for sentencing. Victoria stood on shaking legs. Given the severity of the injuries caused, the pattern of harassment, the abuse of authority, and the trauma inflicted upon a disabled child, the judge's voice hardened. You are hereby sentenced to 18 months in county custody, 5 years probation, and mandatory disability sensitivity training. You will also pay $85,000 in restitution for medical bills, therapy, and damages. The room exploded with whispers. Victoria's knees nearly buckled. Judge Cole didn't slow down. Additionally, you are permanently removed from your HOA presidency, barred from holding any similar position, and your actions will be entered into the public record. Victoria's face crumpled as if struck. She had lost everything. Leadership, reputation, finances, and her carefully curated social standing. The judge concluded, this sentence is to ensure that no child, disabled or otherwise, is ever treated the way Ava Bennett was treated. The gavel hit the desk. Court is adjourned. When Laura stepped out of the courthouse with Ava beside her, a massive crowd was waiting. Reporters, parents, disabled rights advocates, school staff, neighbors, even strangers who followed the case online. A chant began somewhere in the middle. Justice for Ava. Justice for Ava. Ava held Laura's hand tightly. Camera flashes popped like stars. One reporter spoke through the noise. Ms. Bennett, how do you feel about the verdict? Laura smiled softly. A tired, relieved mother's smile. Today wasn't about punishment, she said. It was about protection. No child deserves to be bullied or harmed simply because they move differently. Ava looked up at her mother. And, Laura added, squeezing her little girl's hand, no one gets to decide her value. Not an HOA, not a bully, and certainly not a woman like Victoria Hale. Ava's smile, small, fragile, but real, spread across her face. Just then, police escorted Victoria out the side entrance in handcuffs. Her hair was messy, her mascara smudged from tears. Her expensive clothes suddenly made her look small, desperate even. Someone in the crowd gasped. Someone else whispered, she did all that to a child. The community she once terrorized now barely looked at her. Victoria glanced up for a moment and saw Laura watching. Her lips trembled, but Laura didn't speak. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. Justice had already been served. Victoria was loaded into the police car. The door closed. Her empire, the power she abused for years, ended in that single click. Later that night, Laura tucked Ava into bed. Her wrist was still wrapped in a brace, her knees still bruised. But her eyes held something they hadn't in days. Peace. Mama, she whispered. Is she gone? Laura brushed her hair gently. Yes, baby. She can't hurt you anymore. Ava relaxed against her pillow. I was scared that day, that I did something wrong. Oh, sweetheart, Laura whispered, voice breaking. You did everything right. You were brave, and you survived something no child should ever face. Ava's tiny voice floated in the quiet room. Then, we won? Laura kissed her forehead. Yes. We won. Bo. And for the first time since the nightmare began, Ava drifted into a calm, safe sleep. And that, viewers, is how an HOA bully learned the hard way that no title, no neighborhood committee, and no fake sense of power will ever justify hurting a child, especially a child with disabilities. Justice wasn't just served today. It echoed through the entire community. If you want more real stories where karma hits harder than any HOA president ever could, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And remember, every child deserves protection, respect, and dignity. 6 months passed. But the echoes of what happened at that school bus stop did not fade. They grew. Ava, once just a quiet 9-year-old with metal leg braces, had unknowingly become a symbol far bigger than her small frame. She became hope for thousands of families. And the story didn't end with Victoria Hale's conviction. It was only the beginning. The Bennett neighborhood changed first. Gone were the days of the HOA nitpicking ramps, medical equipment, or kids with disabilities. The remaining board members resigned out of shame. A new, diverse HOA committee formed. 2 disability advocates, 1 retired teacher, a parent of a special needs child, and a community therapist. Their first act? A unanimous vote to create the Ava Safety Code, ensuring no child with disabilities is ever rushed, shamed, or harassed. All public access points must have ramps and handrails. Anyone caught bullying a disabled child faces immediate HOA suspension and fines. Ava attended the announcement with her mother. She held her certificate with pride. People cheered for her. For the first time, she felt seen not for her braces, but for her courage. Laura, as Attorney General, didn't stop at courtroom justice. She drafted a bill, one that would change the entire state. Its name? The Ava Bennett Protection Act. The law included mandatory disability training for all school staff and bus drivers, increased penalties for harming or harassing a disabled child, protection for public accommodations like ramps, braces, and mobility devices, funding for special needs accessibility programs statewide. When the bill was presented in the state capitol, Ava sat in the front row. Lawmakers stood to applaud her bravery. Some even wiped tears. The bill passed with 0 opposition, the first unanimous vote in nearly a decade. Reporters crowded around Ava afterward. One asked gently, "Ava, how does it feel to know you helped change the whole state?" Ava blushed and whispered, "I just wanted people to be kinder. To kids like me." Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "And you did that, sweetheart. You did more than that." Victoria served 14 months of her 18-month sentence, but struggled through every day. Inside, nobody cared that she was once an HOA president. Her complaints went ignored. Her demands dismissed. Her superiority stripped away. She had to attend mandatory therapy sessions where she confronted for the first time in her life the consequences of her cruelty. By the time she was released, her house was foreclosed, her husband had filed for divorce, and her HOA removed her name from every record. No one in the community looked up to her anymore. Some didn't even recognize her. Her downfall was complete, not because of one mistake, but because of years of entitlement finally catching up with her. Ava's future. Months later, Ava's final checkup arrived. Doctors smiled. Her wrist had fully healed. Her knee bruises were gone, and her walking had actually improved thanks to therapy and exercise. And then came the biggest news. "Mrs. Bennett," the doctor said with a grin, "Ava is strong enough to upgrade her braces. She'll walk easier, maybe even run one day." Ava gasped. "Mama, I can run?" Laura smiled, tears filling her eyes. "One day soon, baby." Ava hugged her mother tightly. She wasn't just healing physically, she was becoming confident, outspoken, and fearless. Her classmates treated her differently too. They sat with her at lunch, walked slower with her in the hallways, defended her when needed. Ava wasn't the slow girl with braces anymore. She was the girl who changed the law. On Ava's 12th birthday, the governor invited her to speak at a disability rights event. Ava stood at the podium, braces gleaming under the lights. Her voice was small, but the room fell silent. A lot of people think being different is a bad thing, but it's not. It's just another way of being strong. I'm strong because I survived. I'm strong because people believed me. And I'm strong because my mom fought for me. Everyone deserves someone who fights for them. Laura blinked back tears. The entire room rose for a standing ovation. Ava Bennett, the little girl, once dragged down bus steps, now stood taller than anyone in the room, not because of her height, but because of her courage. And that concludes the story of how a single moment of injustice turned into statewide change. Ava Bennett's bravery reshaped laws, communities, and lives. It proves one thing. When you hurt a child, the world will rise to protect them. And when that child is brave enough to stand tall, they can change everything. If you want more powerful stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you in the next story.